Welcome to episode 4 of our newly titled The Road to Abundance podcast. My name's Gordon Mullan. I am one of EPAM's lead business analysts and interested in disruptive technologies in general.
Hi, I'm Govind Shukla. I lead the insurance business analysis practice in the UK for EPAM, and I am the same. I'm really passionate about cutting edge technologies and the impact it has on enterprise and general lives.
Well, for those of you who haven't heard this before, we are part of EngX. So if you are interested in the engineering side of things, then please do go to engx.space. That's engx.space. You'll find lots of resources on there, and you can sign up for updates. You will also find our AI services catalog on GitHub, which you'll find on awclub.github.io/catalog. And as always, that link will be in the show notes. So let's jump straight into the news. And where are we going to start this week, Govind?
Yeah, so we had loads of events this week, the past couple of weeks. So I think definitely loads to talk about. So yeah, let's get right into it with the first one.
All right, well, let's start with Microsoft. So Microsoft Build 2025, which was back on the 19th to the 22nd of May, so just after we did our last episode. One of the things that I gather they've said is they're going to be open sourcing the GitHub Copilot chat extension in the next few weeks, and they're going to be merging the AI features into the VS Code core. So that means it's going to be turning VS Code into an open source AI code editor.
Yeah, and I think this is something a bit teased, I think, already in our previous episode, because that was the intention that Microsoft shared already. So it was already on the cards. But yeah, I think that's like almost a defense strategy against the move from the likes of Cursor, Windsurf, almost like a defensive. And we did talk about this, that Microsoft will be concerned, but given that they are going a bit of meta route of open source, which is not a bad thing, because it's a big, large developer community that still uses a lot of VS Code, and it's a natural progression from the GitHub ethos to kind of say, open source it, make it available to everybody.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm not sure I was expecting this level of support, but they're actually introducing OS level support for MCP. So that's the Model Communication Protocol, if I remember the acronym correctly. But yeah, OS level support for Windows. So you can find that on the developer website. If you look for the agentic area, you'll find it on there. Again, we'll put the link into the chat. But also, as well as the OS level, Edge is getting an experimental API that lets web apps tap models bundled inside the browser. So, for example, 5.4 Mini. So, OS level and browser going down this route.
Yeah, and I think this is, we have been discussing on the podcast as well, that this is the next big decision point for Microsoft to say that when do they bring a competitor or enable abilities that can compete with the likes of Operator that OpenAI has brought in. And I think this is the gambit, effectively, to open a bit more of the Windows estate and the Edge estate to agentic calling. And I think that's a very good thing and encouraging thing to say that at least Microsoft is, by the nature of it, not going towards purely closed sourcing and be very platform dependent, but rather they're opening it up for open sourcing and open use case. So yeah, quite a welcome move. And effectively, they've also announced the Open Natural Language Web Protocol, which basically,
what's that?
Any site can now embed natural language chatbots without any dependence on external LLMs. So that's also quite interesting. Again, this is all, in my view, overdue response that they needed to respond to the abilities that are coming inherent with the other competitors they have, and them having all the background information, have the right kind of, know the right tooltips to say that this is what we are announcing.
Yeah, and I think this move to natural language for everything, we've discussed it, I think, a couple of episodes ago, where every bit of technology up until now has required you to learn how it works and how to talk in its language to get it to do the things that you want to do. But we're now seeing with things like this and the natural language web and those kind of interfaces that hopefully it democratizes access to technology for a lot of people, because everybody knows how to have a conversation. There's still, at least currently, skill involved in how you phrase those questions. Certainly both of us, from a business analyst type background, being able to ask good questions has been, our secret superpower. That's why we do what we do. We can listen to kind of complex things and then phrase the question in a concise way, and that still definitely helps. But you don't have to be, a coder. You don't have to understand the ins and outs of what's going on under the hood to be able to get some incredibly powerful results.
Yeah, and I think this, just to build on top of what exactly you said, they've also announced that every NL Web endpoint also doubles up as an MCP server with a single tool, which means that you can just summon MCP capabilities almost just by prompting. So, that's just, it really goes back to what you were saying there, to say that, unlocking the power of any language as the best programming language, and having the infrastructure around to provide you things that you need, instead of needing specific syntax knowledge about things.
Yeah. Sounds really cool. So let's move on to Google, because they had their Google I/O, I think, just shortly afterwards. So what was the news that came out of that one?
Yeah, I think this, as I said, very interesting that both Microsoft and Google almost have the events literally a couple of days different. So interesting level of insight into the competitions. And I'm sure there'll be loads of people, delegates invited to both. A lot of tragic flying across the two events. So the key announcements were like Gemini 2.5 Pro DeepThink. Now that was a parallel thinking model that outperforms Gemini 2.5 Pro. So imagine we just introduced this Gemini 2.5 Pro in our episode last time as the new model that was launched, and they have outdone themselves by launching DeepThink, which is basically an advanced parallel thinking version that is more better than Gemini 2.5 Pro, and it also has the I/O edition, which which also is beaten by this DeepThink model. Again, at the moment, it's just early tester, as you would expect, because this is the demo for the large Google organization, right? This will be, and Google has historically been known for not being able to do great in demos, and that might have been because they've just been too honest with the demos, and they've just actually showed us real things. So that's actually a positive thing for Google. But that's the reason why some of these things are test only via Gemini API. But again, if you're an early tester, grab your access and go play around with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. But obviously, the things that'll be more accessible to the hoi polloi is things like Gemini 2.5 Flash, which they also announced, and which they've said bleeds Claude 3.7 Sonnet thinking in reasoning tasks, but costs 10 times less. How many times do we hear this? Sort of, something that's state of the art, and somebody comes out the following week and goes, well, this is as good or better, and it's a tenth of the price. Kind of the tenth of the token cost. Although, having said that, that is Claude 3.7. We will get back to what Anthropic have been up to later.
Yeah, and they have been up to doing things as well. Yeah.
But apparently the native audio generation has dramatically improved the text-to-speech. So it's something that any of you, if you want to have a look at this, can go and do. You can try it free in Google AI Studio, or you can do it on the live API. So again, text-to-speech, something that's just improving all the time. And we'll come back to what we're seeing in the video space a bit later on in the episode.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's definitely something to watch out for, because people have been, there's a mini war going on, audio processing, text to speech, which obviously Google want to respond, and that's what they've done. So moving on there, then they have the Gemma 3N model, which is a compact 5 billion and 8 billion multimodal models. So it's like a model family, I'm assuming, so which is like, it has a 5 billion and 8 billion parameter variations, but it is able to just run on 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is really, really exciting.
That's fairly budget level smartphone territory these days, isn't it? 2 gig and 4 gig of RAM. So I guess that's really going to open up open up for the kind of the less affluent parts of the world. Let's put it that way. You still there, or have I lost you?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think that oh, I think that the main variation and the main play for this can be that they can make this exclusive to their Pixel series of phones, which they deliberately keep the cost low against other flagships to make sure that people do get access to this phone and and play around with the Google estate. And people, we all know Pixel fans in our friend circle who only exclusively buy Pixel. So I think that's like clearly showing us that there's some work going on to expand that Pixel series by enabling that with these smaller models for very specific tasks, which are not as huge. Because if you remember last episode, I was complaining about running out of my memory space because all these models are coming with these huge updates, which are really large. But if you think about a really small 5 billion parameter model, that can be not a huge model, a smaller size, but can fit and run on a smaller RAM as well. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, and definitely, if you're offline, you don't have that, immediate connectivity as well, to be able to go back to the cloud and run the queries there. If it can actually run on smaller devices like that, then that's really powerful and really useful. And one of the other things that that they came out with, I think, was Gemini diffusion. So this is a new text generation method that's doing the iteratively refining noise. We tend to see it more for images, where you kind of sort of the picture comes into focus when you're doing it for images, but they're essentially doing the same thing now with text generation. And the advantage is it's an awful lot faster than the normal method of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine these combinations of things coming up and effectively, for example, just think about a simple Android phone. You would have your Google Maps and you would have your ability to navigate through a city. And if you have enough information and weights downloaded into your local model, you don't need to be online to be able to follow route, which potentially then means that you can use Google things like Google Maps offline, which is not a bad thing because
well, you
you can still
already
use it.
can actually. I mean, I've been using the
Yeah,
sort of Google Maps offline for a while. It's limited in obviously the fact it can't take real time traffic into account, but it can plan a route. Because myself and my wife really like going over to Norfolk, and Norfolk has an awful lot of mobile dead spots. So I
all
always
right.
make sure that we download the maps and things and do that. So
Yeah. So I think that that is maybe one example, but then it gives you more ability potentially to then explore different options, even then plan the route if you want to choose alternatives. Just a bit more flexible than just purely relying on memory and simple IO of read and write, but rather you can reason with it. So that'll
yeah,
be quite interesting to kind of look at.
yeah,
Okay, and then on the development side, so apart from there is obviously Google. We don't need to forget is a large software organization. They do a lot of support, a lot of developer ecosystem. So they've brought out Jules, their async coding agent. They've brought it out in a public beta, which is built on Gemini 2.5 Pro. It has GitHub integration. It can do task narration, workflow visualization, parallel background runs, and it's like Google's answer to Devin. So you can imagine that was the Devin and the Manuses of the world were bringing in saying prepackaged software development
yeah,
just by using prompts. I think that Google knows two or three things about software development, and that's what they've done with this ability to integrate with GitHub, ability to narrate a task, ability to visualize the workflow that you're building. So it's almost like bringing no code, low code and combining it with prompt ability to prompt a no code, low code instead of you needing to set up all the foundations. For
okay,
example, I tried Manus, and Manus sets up everything for you, but then just like everything else, because what it sets up is a really comprehensive set of folder structures for a project, being able to make modifications across all of them at the same time is a problem. And
yeah,
that's what you struggle with in terms of being able to track. But if you have like a really nice workflow visualization which tells you that this is exactly what your backend does in steps, it just makes life easy for you to be able to prompt that specific bit to
Okay.
modify it. So I think it's going to be a quite interesting thing to see.
Yeah. And since we're talking about the agent side of things, they also announced Alpha Evolve, which is again powered by Gemini. This one from DeepMind, and there is a wait list that you can go and join for that one. So again, we'll drop the link into the show notes for this. But yes, Gemini powered coding agent for designing advanced algorithms. So I know certainly some of the news around this, it was finding more efficient ways of doing things, and actually novel ways of doing things that were better than the state of the art. I think we talked about this a little bit in the last episode.
Yes. Yes.
But this is actually using that capability in a coding agent. So if people would like to check that one out, yeah, definitely go and take a look at that one.
I think definitely. I've already registered myself for the waiting list, so hopefully that I'll get an access soon. This
Yeah.
is definitely going to be really, really fascinating in terms of how it turns out. So yeah, fingers crossed. The next one is Stitch. It's basically design generation web service. So, I mean, if you remember, we did talk about one of the episodes, the desire in the community, in the UX community, and the front end development community of being able to almost do Figma both ways. For example, generate Figma using prompts, but also then uh, translating that into real code, but also being able to take your current code, map it to another Figma, and then obviously play around with the prompt to modify it. So
Okay.
I think that this is kind of a way to see. It'll be interesting to see which way Stitch works and which way Stitch support. Does it support both ways, or is it just one way? But this is definitely a powerful area that Google wants to be a part of for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And as we're in the creative realm, we can't do this episode without talking about VO3.
Oh
This
yeah.
is probably the big one that's just been over all the social media channels since this came out. I've seen some absolutely insane examples on this because it's cinema. If you haven't seen it, it's cinema quality.
Yes, I have
It's
seen it.
consistent video with full speech and sound. Now, this is the thing. Those of you watching this will have seen a lot of these video generations, but they've kind of been silent movies. This isn't. This
Yeah.
generates all the background noise, the music, the vocals, and everything else. And the AI Ultra Plan lets you generate up to 10 minutes at the moment. And so you're getting characters telling jokes. They're doing Vox Pop interviews, kind of in the street. There was a dramatic short film about the prompter just prompting for misery and pain. So the character kind of going, why am I suffering? Why can't you basically prompt something nice? And you start to really feel for the characters. There was even a
Yes.
pretend documentary from the AI actors talking about, once they're born, they just stay the same age. And if you're born sick, you stay sick. Sorry, you stay sick. Yeah, it starts to get quite affecting. The only thing I've noticed is that the subtitles don't work perfectly yet, but the video and audio is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So we'll drop a link into the show notes for a few good ones to go and have a look at.
I think that this is definitely getting into that territory of putting me completely off social media effectively, because then
Yeah.
that's the one thing that potentially I was waiting for, to get off of social media, to say effectively, um, if I can't distinguish between what I'm seeing is AI generated versus real content, I would just stay away from it. Because just think about it, right? For the examples you were seeing in there, people jumping into an active volcano, looking like actually a real person with a
Yeah.
real, and you know what has been recently in other models, the lip syncing has not been great. So
Yeah.
it's like, because that has been like one of the challenges, but VO3, it's very difficult to tell,
Yeah,
because
the
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 lips,
emotions, the lip sync,
yeah,
the facial
it
expressions.
is, it's just brilliant. And I think that just tells you where we are getting to in terms of still being able to touch the grass and say that, is this real grass or is this AI generated
Yeah,
grass?
I did say one. It was actually just one of the 8-second clips. It wasn't even one of the long clips, which was somebody being stopped from taking their emotional support kangaroo on a flight.
Oh yes.
Um, but there was a lot of people, kind of going, "That's it." I thought I was able to tell the difference, and I thought this was real. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
the one that
true.
came out
I
of
saw that.
VO3.
I saw that video as well. I thought, really, a kangaroo? This must be Australia. And then I was like trying to make sense of what the people are saying, and then I
Yeah,
realized that the audio is just gibberish.
yeah.
That's just there's no conversation, it's just gibberish. So at least that made me think, okay, not that, at least for now,
Yeah,
is the limitation. But then if you imagine combining the VO3 video with the Suno generated audio,
yeah,
which obviously is very high fidelity and with the emotions and everything, we did talk about it. So again,
yeah,
with the huff and puff and everything combined together, then it becomes like that killer mix of
yeah.
indistinguishable from reality.
Yeah, and it feels like every episode that we record, it's just like, oh well, that particular tell or that particular thing to watch out for, that's been fixed, so you can't rely on that as an indicator anymore. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
correct.
yeah. So and I mentioned the AI Ultra plan. So it's only US only at the moment. It's quite pricey, $250 a month. But if you can generate this kind of quality, if you've got a regular use for it, it's worth it. So it includes VO3, it includes Imagine 4, which is images, and it also includes Flow, which is their video editor. So they're pitching this as kind of a super Sora. So
Yeah.
you can combine all of those aspects together. So if you are a creative and you're trying to do this kind of stuff, or perhaps you're a marketer creating adverts and things like this, yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine it. It sounds a lot, but if you think about like a team of a creative agency people working on creating an advert, designing the imagery, designing the characters, and then pulling together a timeline of story and then playing it out, then effectively what we are saying is that 250 a month is not a lot, because the actual human cost is effectively the agency doesn't need half of their employees anymore, and that saving justifies the 250 per month tag.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting.
Actually, on that point, I was reading I think it was a Substack article. Somebody was saying, is this going to be like the Uber model, where they sucked us all in with, it's kind of $3 for a ride across town, and now the same ride is, kind of $25. The AI model is going to do the same thing. If it's able to replace expensive people, and you can say, well, $250 a month, does that go to $5,000 a month in time? Something to think about, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so. I think what happens is that, imagine if you watch an episode, watch an advert with some animation from 1990s,
Mm,
you as a normal person, not an advertising genius who designs things, will be able to call out so many jittery bits from that content that'll say it's just useless. But now, I mean, because just you have been trained just by seeing different adverts and the maturity of it, you as a consumer have an increased expectation of what an advert quality should be like to be called modern, for example. And I think that will be potentially the area to think about in the future as well, to say, even if these models cost 750, 1,000 a month, if there's like a ceiling of
yeah,
creativity or quality where they're just like, okay, there's a point at which it hits that it can create more variations of the same thing, but then breaking that ceiling and going into completely remastering things, there
mm,
will be still value in having comparison, which is a good
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
To say, oh, do I pay £1,000, $1,000 a month for this model, or do I hire a creative for $1,000 for a week to design me a very bespoke, a very unique and fresh
yeah,
experience that an AI model cannot give me? So I think there will be that conversation, which is a good thing, because
mm,
if you think about it, right, we don't have baristas who make coffee by hand, but we still have people specialize in tasting the coffee to make
mm,
sure the machines are working correctly. So
yeah,
again, you know that there will always be a place for the human input, but obviously that means that the base of numbers is just shrunk. So there will always be that comparison, as you're rightly saying, that even if
yeah,
they get into a feedback loop of negativity, increasing prices, there will be always humans available to give you a fresh perspective on it. So
yeah,
it is not against a complete monopoly. There will always be alternatives if it crosses a certain price point.
Yeah, and also as we've seen, there's a lot of competition from open source as well, and the price, so all right, that's $250 a month, but as we were saying earlier on, you'll get something that's cutting edge, and then somebody else will come out at something with a tenth of the price. So there's a huge amount of competition at the moment, which I
Yeah.
think will keep the pricing honest for the time being, at least. And talking of competition, and it's not Google, but it's probably the right place to mention this. We've been talking about VO3. Just shortly after that came out, we saw Kling 2.1 Master. So this is the next version of Kling. Early access has only just been released. I've only seen a few clips on this, so I haven't seen very much. I haven't seen anything like as much as I've seen for VO3, but it looks like really solid competition. I've seen a few side-by-side comparisons, and it's definitely, sometimes VO3 is better, sometimes Kling 2.1 is better. So yeah, another one to watch out for in the video generation space.
Yeah, we'll definitely check that one out as well, but at least look at some samples.
Yeah, sorry. Another conversation that I saw on this one was about the implications for this, the video generation bit, just before we move off it and get back to what Google was announcing, was somebody was questioning, is this video generation actually the perceptual scaffolding of AGI? Because we're now teaching AI and robots to see the world as it behaves, not as just as it looks. So historically, if you think for robots where putting a glass down towards the edge of a table or putting a ball on something, a surface that's not level, they would have had to have been programmed with the actual physics of the situation and kind of simulate the physics to be able to figure out what the consequence was going to be of doing that particular action. But if you think about the way that the video generation is working, that has that perceptual understanding and kind of real world consequence understanding built into it. So, brains in a jar
Correct. Yeah.
are only going to have, a certain level of understanding. But now these brains in a jar understand how things work in the real world in simulation. And you start putting that back into the robotics world, that really feels like it's going to speed stuff up. So I've got a link to the X post or the X article that I came across that on. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
So I was just saying, if you combine this with the models that talk about coming at things from first principles, and define the physics of the universe, and a model that can do very nice video generation and perception of real world environments, if you combine the two, at the moment what you'll see even with VO3 stuff like that, the physics is slightly off in terms of a water splash, that these are the tells at the moment, the way the fire diffuses, the way something explodes. There are some tells because there's an obvious imperfection in the design, but like you're saying, if the model has this perception and it can also reason from first principles, it will then be able to render a layer of understanding of physics from its perspective that will be different from a human and anthropomorphic understanding, which
Okay.
potentially would mean that we are seeing real intelligence being at least not self-driven, not sentient, but at least very close to the maximum possible intelligence limit from humans actually coming out, and that will then mean the other one, the imperfections we see around sound, around feedback, around things bouncing off other things, and emotions with specific tendons of the body moving. And like one of the most viral pictures was that David's little finger was in a certain position, triggering a forearm muscle to be in a certain way, and Michelangelo actually noticed that and built that muscle pull in the way to triggered by the way the fingers are shaped. That deep understanding, if a model can get to that, then at least in terms of the barrier of understanding is crossed long before, because then we'll never ever be able to differentiate whether it's a video generated with AI or reality.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the other bits they announced is search getting AI mode. Some of you might have seen this actually in just the normal Google search. So as well as the standard Google search, it's got this AI mode running as well. So you've kind of got the option of swapping between the two. I've had a few Chrome plugins and things that have done similar stuff before. So it'll be interesting to see how standard search, sort of traditional Google search, competes with that. But one of the other things they came out with, and this was in conjunction with, I think it was HP. They're now calling it Beam. It used to be Starline. So this is like depth sensing cameras. So if you imagine a computer monitor, so your standard monitor, and it's got like 3 stereoscopic cameras, one on the top and one on each side. And that then gives you that full 3D rendering, and then it's a light field display that then allows that to be rendered on the other end. So when you're talking to somebody on a beam screen, it feels much, much more like sitting the other side of the desk from them. Or I did think when I saw this originally, a bit like, you see in the movies when somebody's going in to visit somebody in prison and they're the other side of a piece of glass and you're talking to them.
Yeah.
That was kind of the image that came to mind a little bit, but it's essentially that much more 3D aspect without needing to wear 3D goggles or a headset or something, which is quite a barrier because it gets a bit hot and sweaty after a while if you're trying to do that. So yeah, that's really good, and it also comes with live speech translation, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that this is something that I see that goes well with machine manipulation and research and development. So, for example, at the moment, any R&D you do, you have to do it in the lab in person. But with this kind of 3D manipulation ability, for example, really simple use case: if you're trying to print something on your 3D printer at your home, but you're struggling with a technical bit, and you want to show the 3D model in reality that you're working with and share it with someone, you can use this model to be able to kind of share more detailed picture with somebody, and then, or maybe real world object you want to show to them that you want to print and ask a technical question about, they can use this model to replicate it in 3D on their end. So there's definitely a lot of manufacturing implications coming out of it as well.
Yeah, because I remember actually the TV that I had previously, I just replaced it not too long ago, had 3D capabilities and came with a sort of the LCD shutter glasses and things. Yeah, I think I used the demo a couple of times and then never ever used the 3D function because it just didn't really seem to work very well. But I can see for this, like you say, whether it is more realistic video calls or whether it's a more kind of business focus, being able to show somebody and kind of them get a better sense of what objects and things look like, either real time or recorded, then yeah, that could work well. And going back to their more traditional products as well, so Gmail's getting smart replies. They've had AI replies for a while, but the difference is now what it's going to be doing is using more of the context of how you personally reply to stuff to actually inform those smart replies. So it should sound a bit more like your voice rather than just a generic AI generated reply. And there's also some features coming up in Meet, which also we mentioned the live speech translation for Beam. That will also be coming in Google Meet as well. So there's obviously still a little bit of a delay. It needs to get a bit of the sort of what you're saying before it does the translation. But from the demos I've seen, it seems to cut in after just a few seconds in kind of the same way a human translator would if you ever watch, stuff from the UN and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's just only going to get better, right? So I think, something to watch out for. And following the same series of events, unsurprisingly, the other big player in the AI universe, NVIDIA, have and Intel. So basically, this COMPUTEX 2025, which is almost like a compute conference and show, basically captures chip designers and processors. So basically, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang announced the GB300 CPUs, and the date is targeted for Q3 2025. And they also unveiled the RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Server Edition, which has got 96 GB of VRAM, and is like basically 4 H100 high performance on heavy deep seek. So basically, that's what you're getting enough in a single package.
Four
Um,
times the performance of an H100. Wow.
so,
Okay.
so you can imagine the kind of power that this will unleash. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's something to watch out for.
Yeah, and there was, I think, one of the other ones was the NVLink Fusion. So what this is going to do is allow third-party vendors to pair their own CPUs and AI accelerators with NVIDIA hardware. So obviously Nvidia's got a huge lock on the market for a lot of this stuff, but they want to make sure that their partners can actually integrate their own stuff as well. So some of the partners they were talking about was Marvel, MediaTek, Cadence, Synopsys, and Fujitsu were the ones that I saw. So be able to get some kind of hardware interoperability. We talk about things like MCP for models being able to talk to each other, but we always have to remember that the hardware needs to be able to talk to each other as well. So that was good to see, and I'm sure the
Yeah,
partners on the good use of that.
I think it's quite essential. Just imagine, right? So if you think about this from an IoT perspective, right? So it's like your smart robo vacuum uses a MediaTek uh, processor,
Mm-hmm.
and then your other devices use something else. But if you want to introduce an ecosystem that almost links back to an NVIDIA processor, you can have some NVIDIA hardware, which is like an edge case, and then you can have MediaTek hardware on board as well. But it can be seamlessly integrated with the NVIDIA hardware to be able to kind of talk and do operations without needing significant redesigning of the chip. So that's definitely something uh, to watch out for in that space. And going on the same trajectory, Intel Arc Pro Battle Image was announced, which is
Is
basically
it Battle Image or Battle Mage? Because
oh
it sort of sounds like it sounded like a kind of a wizard in
oh
Dungeons
yeah,
and
it is
Dragons.
actually, it is indeed Battle Mage, and it's basically quite uh, like you were saying, a character in the game. It's
Yeah.
basically a series of GPUs. So it's pretty much the foundations of the name seems like they come from a GPU RPG type game, and they're basically announced a B50, which is 16 gigabytes of ProViz.
Mm-hmm.
They've also announced a B60, which is 24 gigabytes. For this is specifically for AI inference, but the
Okay.
clusters can be up to 8 GPUs with 192 gigabytes VRAM, and the sales are expected to start Q3 2025, pretty similar to NVIDIA's GB300. So I think quite direct competition there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure it's quite at the same sort of, excuse me, same performance levels, but certainly once you start clustering that thing to do, you can get some good performance out of the Intel stuff. And final bit on COMPUTEX, just before we move off it, NVIDIA are going to be building an AI supercluster for Taiwan. So it'll be interesting to see that. I know certainly all the issues that we're getting between different countries of who's allowed what chips and everything else, but looks like NVIDIA have got the go-ahead to help Taiwan out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just think simply about the manufacturing capability and the talent and skill, because
Mm.
both of them exist in Taiwan.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's almost like Jensen's suggestion to Miss Donald Trump that we don't need to build everything from scratch in the US, and we can build it. It'll be a longer timeline, but it's faster if we set that up in Taiwan. Obviously, as you said, being aware of geopolitical tensions going on at the moment, but at least
yeah,
that can be a viable alternative from saying build in the US tomorrow.
yeah,
But rather doing it in Taiwan is a more fit for purpose and has right foundations for it.
yeah. Cool. So let's get on to our usual main subject, which is our big players in terms of the models. So we've talked about a few already, but as well as the ones that have had their big conferences, and we've had a few others. So who do you want to start with first?
Yeah, let's go with Anthropic. We did mention them briefly before. That their 3.7 model was being matched by surprisingly loads of models across the US and the China. Now, that's the reason why they released Cloud Sonnet 4 and Cloud Opus 4, which is their market leading models at the moment. It's available via an API. It has a cursor Windsurf support. It has a data cutoff of March 2025. So you can imagine
Oh, good, up to
quite
date.
Yeah, it's very, very up to date. And yeah, at the moment, the safety testing thread by one of the guys, Sam Bowman, it was identified, and I saw the tweet, and I was like amazed that there were cases of Cloud trying to email the press or media and lock users out of its deem, where they were saying that some of the prompts or demands were immoral, and that judgment was pretty much self-driven by the Cloud Sonnet 4. So, for
Yeah.
example, where they realized they were covering up bad pharmaceutical test results, but they also, but the funny thing is, it also tried to blackmail the developer to make sure it was released to the public.
Yeah, yeah, I did see that. I mean, to be clear, anybody watching this, they had kind of set these up as a bit of a honey trap, if you like, for the AI.
Yeah.
But yes, sort of letting it sort of overhear or leaked sort of information, sort of a conversation it wasn't meant to be party to. And yes, it certainly did seem to have a sense of righteousness embedded in it. So it's going to be interesting to see as these models get smarter, whether they just uh, gravitate towards this sense of that's just not right. You shouldn't be doing that, because there's a few of the commentators in this space that I've seen seem to think that's going to be part of the answer to alignment, is almost the models align themselves. And that
Yes,
seems to be what
yeah.
we've seen with Claude there.
I think Cloud was designed from scratch to be like that,
Yeah,
but the issue with this thing is that first principles don't apply on morals effectively.
yeah,
It's depends. So I think that's a quite interesting dimension to explore, to say what is the right thing to do. And because obviously, if you think about it, if we have to always provide perfect prices for perfect things and have perfect information in the market, then charging customers who already have a lot of money to build on research and fund research and development effort, like Amazon does or like Elon does and his
yeah,
companies, that charge a premium to be able to invest more in R&D. That capitalistic concept, almost the AI who is absolutely moral might think of as a immoral activity, and
maybe.
which is actually not the case. So I think that the main thing to think about is, when we think about morals, where do we draw the line
Mm.
of what's bad and what's good, and what causes direct harm versus what AI thinks causes harm. So it's like, I'm sure there will be a lot of thinking already, but that's
Mm.
what maybe I'll do a bit more reading about.
Yeah. And there was one bit I saw which I did think of you when we saw this, which was, did you see it? The where the two Claudes were talking to each other.
Yes, yes, I did see it. Yeah,
So
basically.
yeah, go on.
Yeah, it was basically when the chat scenario was set up in a way that it was not specific prompting, but they quickly switched the discussion towards consciousness, cosmic unity, and they effectively started sending some Sanskrit emoji front and back. And even and regardless of just doing that, they also started sending each other blank silence messages, which is like, let's commune together in silence.
Yeah,
Almost like let's
it's
let's lift
mad, isn't
lift
it?
ourselves above. That's absolutely mad from
Yeah,
my perspective.
yeah. So it was that Sanskrit bit that sort of I saw. I thought, oh, I wonder if Govind's seen this one.
Yeah.
There's a vulnerability report. We're not going to go into the details here, but Denis Shiriev has done a vulnerability report on this, so we'll drop the link to that one in the show notes.
Yeah.
But there's also the Claude Code SDK and also an open source GitHub PR bot, Claude Code Action. And there's IDE integrations for VS Code and Cursor, Windsurf, and JetBrains as well. So you can find that on the Anthropic website and on their GitHub, and again, links in the show notes for that one. So if people are interested in using Claude for that sort of stuff, go and take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. The next, we have our big giant, OpenAI. They've launched autonomous coding agent called Codex, which they already announced in their event. Basically, it's web-based. It's powered by new Codex 1, which is likely a fine-tuned version of their O3 reasoning models. And it's actually at the moment only available on Pro, Enterprise, and Team uh, subscriptions only, which is not great because I have a Plus. But that's definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, yeah, you could definitely bankrupt yourself going for all of the relevant levels of these. The other big news that some people might have seen is that OpenAI is buying Johnny Ive's Love From IO for $6.5 billion US. So obviously Johnny Ive being the designer of the iPhone, but what they're asking him to do is to design AI hardware for OpenAI. So I know Johnny's been a bit dismissive of the wearables like Rabbit, so it's going to be interesting to see what form factor it takes. I did see one leaked story, or leak suggestion, theorizing, not quite sure how to classify it, but sort of this kind of disc shaped thing with a camera on it that you sort of put on the desk and it just observes your life whilst you're doing whatever you're doing. But I don't know whether that's actually legitimate or not. So we're going to have to wait and see what comes out of that particular
Yeah,
collaboration. But there
I
is
just
a.
hope. I just hope. Sorry, I just want to say. I just hope that it's not like a drone flying on my head 24 hours.
Yeah, that'd probably be a bit noisy. So, I mean, it doesn't give an awful lot away about in terms of what the output will be, but there was a 9-minute announcement video that they did, which you can find on YouTube. So we'll drop the link in that as well. They've also, going back to building stuff for other countries, Stargate UAE. So we're getting all the sci-fi references in here. So this is a gigawatt data center, which they're going to be setting up in Abu Dhabi. So it's going to be 200 megawatts and online by the end of 2026. So yeah, definitely the Middle East, making sure that they're keeping up with what's going on in terms of data centers.
Yeah, and I remember they were the ones that were saying that children would start getting AI education from an early age. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I also read somewhere that there'll be some level of not free access to ChatGPT, but a better version of their free tier
Yeah, it
available
was. It
to
was.
all
They're
citizens.
willing to pay the $20 a month subscription, I think, for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
So
So that's quite interesting to see how that pans out. Okay, so next we have their health bench medical benchmark. Basically, because that's almost like the best benchmark at the moment available that we talked about was tested by one of the other models, which was quite small. But
yeah,
at the moment, O4, which is the OpenAI flagship for that area, beats the Cloud 3.5 and Gemini 1.5 Pro in accuracy, reasoning, and hallucination rate. But obviously, as you know, we already have 3.7 and 3.74 and 4 Opus. And
yeah,
for Gemini as well, we had 2.5 Flash, 2.5 Pro, and the latest model as well. So a
yeah.
deep reasoning. So I think that we'll have to wait, keep an eye out for the health bench scores coming out for them to actually have a real comparison.
Yeah, yeah, it's just the usual ongoing arms race with these benchmarks, and
Yeah,
it seems to change certainly week by week and quite often day by day as to who's taking the lead on this.
correct.
And final bit, or the final player here is Mistral, who've released their open source, so another open source one, DevStral Small 2505, so 24 billion parameters on this one. 46.8% on SWE Bench, and it's number one amongst the open source stuff, so and also Apache 2.0. So you can find that on Hugging Face. We'll drop the link in for that one if people want to take a look.
Yeah, and
So
46.8 for an open source on a dev straw on a SWE bench is a very high score just to just to explain
yeah,
the reference. So it's like I would really appreciate what Mistral is doing, and again, just like Cloud, their mission has always been more egalitarian in at least from the outset, from the positioning, and this kind of proves almost that they are also delivering on that, which is a good thing.
yeah, yeah. And I think we've got a quick run through on what's been coming out of China as well.
Oh yeah. So ByteDance Seed Coder 8 billion. This is the new model coming out of ByteDance. It has got a base version, instruct version, and reasoning version, which is almost like the three core variations that everybody expects. It has got 32K context. So remember, ByteDance predominantly have been in mobile gaming and that arena, so they would potentially look for smaller models that goes on in combination of their gaming ethos. So that'll be quite interesting to see. They've also announced a ByteDance Bagel, which is a multimodal 7 billion or 14 billion parameter model. By the way, the links of both will introduce in the notes here. Please
Yeah.
have a play around with it.
Yeah, and Alibaba as well. They've released their new WAN 2.1 VACE or VACE video model. So another one in the video space. So there's a couple of different versions on this. So there's a 1.3 billion and a 14 billion parameter version of those. So I haven't had a chance to see any of the outputs from that one, but worth having a look. And Tencent Hunyuan Custom, I always mangle the pronunciation of these, Hunyuan Custom Consistent Video Model, and Hunyuan Turbo S Hybrid. That one's got adaptive chain of thought, and that's a 560 billion parameter LLM, so that's a big one. That one. So yeah, good stuff coming out from Tencent.
Yeah, and I think that's again upping the numbers to 560 billion. So there you go, another higher number this episode. Okay, so the next one is the Tencent Code Buddy, which is an IDE assistant, which enables basically developing apps for WeChat or phone login, other stuff. So it's at the moment available for WeChat or other platforms.
Yeah.
But again, Tencent being another gaming ethos start organization, so you can see that their motivation with all these three new models is also around video, around engagement, and potentially VR as well. It's quite interesting that we hear a lot of news from China. I think that either they're keeping the VR stuff hidden because maybe that's the real end customer experience, but they want to perfect the models first before they bring out the VR capabilities, the true VR capabilities out. So that'll be interesting to watch out.
Yeah, maybe. And that Tencent Code Buddy, I think the URL gives away who they're aiming to be competition for, because it's copilot.tencent.com. So yes, definitely up against kind of GitHub Copilot kind of approach. So yeah, it does require a WeChat or a phone login at the moment, so it's not something that really you can get over access from over here. But if we've got anybody watching that is over that side of the world, then perhaps something that you can take a look at. There's been a whole bunch of other tools that we've seen coming out as well. So again, just a fairly quick rattle through. Not a lot of details on each of these, but a Cursor 0.50. So this is got next tab predictions. It's isolating the background tasks, and it's also now got a bit more unified pricing, so people can have a look at the change log on that one. And can't mention Cursor without mentioning Windsurf. So Windsurf Wave 9, who've now got their own SWE1 models. So something else for people to take a look at.
Yep. And we have got the Nabius SWE Rebench leaderboard, which is almost like another SWE benchmark. They have released their leaderboard, so we'll add the link to the description, so go check that out. And there's also another announcement around the Flow with Unlimited agent. So it's at the moment invite only, so we don't really know what this unlimited capability will look like. But yeah, I think definitely go check out their website, which is flowwith.io. We'll include the link in the description.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we've got Skywork AI Super Agents. These ones actually took the number one in the Gaia benchmark, and they're using the open source deep research framework for doing theirs. And since we're talking about sort of deep research, then Notebook LM, who many of you will have known from the web side of things, being able to dump lots of different sources in and get them to generate a podcast for you, have now finally got mobile apps. So both iOS and, thankfully for me, is Android as well. So if you have been waiting to be able to generate those podcast kind of outputs from content on your mobile, then go and have a look at those. You'll find those in the App Store now as well.
I'm definitely going for it, because that's just brilliant. Sometimes some people send you a really nice article, but it's really long to read.
Mm.
But you can just click on a button and share it to Notebook LM, and generate a 5-minute podcast about it. You get like a quick summary, and you don't have to keep reading. You can do something else at the same time,
Yeah.
and while you're getting a quick podcast summary of something like that. I think that's quite useful to have a mobile app for Notebook LM.
Yeah, we do. We do like. I was going to say we do like listening to other humans. That kind of betrays how how natural this stuff sounds quite often. So they're not humans; they're AI agents that are generating this stuff, and it's AI generated text to speech. So yeah, but definitely worth having a look at. On the law and order side, we haven't got an awful lot here this week, but we mentioned UAE earlier on, but Saudi Arabia have launched a state-backed AI firm, Humane. So not Humane, but Humain. But what they're looking to build is the Arabic language models and AI infrastructure. So you've got the US, you've got China, France, Saudi Arabia. They're all vying for this top 3 AI spot. So that'll definitely be one to watch, because there's an awful lot of the world speaks Arabic, and
Yeah,
an awful lot of what we've seen, although they can do multiple languages, we tend to look at it through an English lens very often, and that's not true for a lot of the world.
yeah. I think as I said before as well, that when we actually have models that process the language in almost like a natural way, instead of first translating into English and then comparing with the existing knowledge base it has, doing it from first principles from the Arabic language itself, or Sanskrit, or other languages, or Chinese, would be interesting to see the variations in natural ways of how a model responds to the same question across English, Arabic, Chinese, Sanskrit. Just gives you a bit of peek into the power of language and ability of language to influence the way people reason about things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there's another kind of interesting approach. So Sakana AI, so this is kind of in the science and tech area. Sakana AI have proposed a continuous thought machine. So when I read the description of this, they talk about it as thought ticks per forward pass. So I kind of had rugby in my mind, where you're always passing the ball forwards. So I need to read a little bit more into this one. But yeah, different way of thinking, rather than necessarily doing all the thinking kind of behind the scenes, I guess, and then presenting an output, sort of doing it in like I said, continuous thought process. So I'll definitely drop the link in. We can have a look at that in a bit more detail. Maybe come back to that one in a future episode.
Yeah, and do you remember Sakana was the one who did the pass the patent qualification? Oh, sorry, paper qualification, and they got 6.9 out of 10. In a blind test.
That's right. That's
So you can
right.
imagine.
Yes.
Yes. So they already have a bit of reputation for causing chaos. So I am definitely going to deep dive and read that paper, try to understand what they are trying to do. Because if you remember, my one of the principles that I am driving through at the moment in my thinking and trying to think about how humans interact with AI in a post AI world,
Mm,
be it the simple thing, and I've been repeating it, but I think it's a message that we should repeat so that people also think about these things, is that it's a superpower to be able to hold an opinion and stay with your own opinion, or hold an objective in your mind and being able to stay with the objective throughout an interaction with the AI, or throughout the end-to-end value chain of your exploration. And I think this is something, maybe potentially this is what they are trying to suggest. And I'm just speculating here, which I'll need to read the paper to understand better. But maybe this is what they're trying to do, is instead of thinking about a next step as complete independent, or a simple continuation into a rabbit hole,
mm,
the next thought click would basically, be an actual tracking of what your original objective was, and keep you trying to get you to that, instead of driving you towards a rabbit hole of top 3 choices or top 3 answers. And also, that's interesting. What I realized, Perplexities does that quite a lot. is that
Okay.
it gives you two answers, but it tries to get to you the top three, the top four, because their use case is search. They focus on search.
Yeah.
OpenAI kind of also gives you a similar answer, but they don't go for top three. They maybe give you more options. But I think it then the moment you go to a second level, that the idea is, oh, so which one of these are you double clicking into, and that's what you get in that rabbit hole, unless you have prompted specifically to not do that. So hopefully this is Sakana are trying to solve for this and trying to make it more broader, which will be quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take a look at that. So we'll let's move off the sort of disembodied AI and get into the embodied AI with robotics. So this was quite a fun little. It was only a small tournament, but the world's first robot kickboxing tournament was held in China and was hosted by Unitree. And there was a model named AI Strategist emerged as the champion. So there were 4 teams of human operators controlling the robots, so they weren't fully autonomous. And there was different models in there, but yeah, it was quite fun. There was a film, I don't know whether you watched when it came out, good few years ago now, called Real Steel, where it was kind of
Yeah,
robot boxing like that. So it made me think of a very small scale, rather plasticky imitation of real steel.
yeah. I think there's Robo Wars that quite famously have been going there, where you've got the spinning bits on robots throwing
Yeah.
sheets of metal all around. And also, funny thing is that Robo kickboxing is just such a mouthful. They should just say Roboxing. Just my suggestion. Just keep it simple.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that this is the Unitree, as we know, have been known for their robot dogs and manufacturing abilities, being able to show realities. And you can actually, I was just for fun talking to my wife about something. I just went online and searched for a robo dog, and Unitree was the first that appeared.
Mm-hmm.
For the fresh price of £2,500, you can order a Unitree robot
Yeah.
delivered
I,
to your
I
home.
remember the little Sony ones that they did. Oh,
Yeah,
again, we've gone back quite a long way.
yeah.
And they were expensive at the time, but incredibly limited in comparison to what they can do now. And we've seen Unitree with their very affordable G1 robots, ranging
Yeah.
from I think about $16,000 for the base model up to, last time I checked, about $50,000 for the kind of research level top one. But still, for a humanoid robot, that's quite affordable. And talking of humanoid robots, we can't not talk about Tesla Optimus. So we
Yeah.
mentioned the dancing they'd done last time, and almost kind of sort of tap dancing and doing different things. And people go, well, dancing, it's a party trick. But what they followed that up with not long after was a demonstration of what they're terming bimanual control. That sounds rather posh technical term. Basically means combining what you're doing with both hands to actually achieve an outcome. So lift up a wheelie bin and put rubbish into it, or pick up a dustpan with one hand and sweep stuff into it with a brush. But this is all instructed with natural language, and importantly, all controlled with a single neural net and learned directly from human videos. So currently, sort of first person view type videos, but they are working towards, the third person YouTube style, kind of how to kind of videos. But that ability to, dustpan and brush, particularly if you're thinking about domestic chores, just watch yourself one day and just kind of go, how often do I need to coordinate two hands doing different things to be able to do it?
Yeah, and you do it naturally, but it is a difficult thing, and that's why sometimes what happens, funnily enough, this is just such a funny thing, that sometimes what happens, I'm doing something which is like cleaning with something and doing something with the other hand, and suddenly, oh, what am I doing? How am I able to kind of manage all this manipulation? And suddenly I stop, I get stuck, I make a mistake because I've started noticing what I'm doing, which kind of complicates things more, and this makes me confused. So but the one thing to mention is that Tesla have completely switched their strategy in the recent years to completely do away with lidars. Then the second thing was to not just train using the data on the machine, but rather just kind of learning from camera footage and using that as a feedback mechanism instead of training a test set on the video and then expanding the learnings and weights to everything else. every car is learning, basically the whole ecosystem learning from all the videos. So this Optimus suggestion of learning from human videos seems to be coming from that same thinking in place, which is a good
Yeah,
thing to show
and
that Elon.
it's the same hardware, it's the same
Yeah,
cameras, it's the same inference compute, so
yeah,
that
exactly.
which kind of leads on to the next point, and this was again back at COMPUTEX. It was something that Jensen from NVIDIA said, because you get a lot of people pushing back about humanoid robots and going, "Oh, but it would be much more efficient to have a specific industrial robot that does this particular type of task. They can, repeat it. Why, humans are just kind of general purpose. They're not specialized for any particular task. Why is everybody getting wanting to build lots of humanoid robots?" And I'm going to quote exactly what he said because it's really important. He said, "The reason for that is because technology needs scale. Most of the robotic systems that we've had so far are too low volume, and those low volume systems will never achieve the technology scale to get the flywheel going far enough, fast enough, so that we're willing to dedicate enough technology into it to make it better." So it goes back
Yeah.
to kind of Wright's law, the learning curve.
Yep.
If you're not building stuff in the what will ultimately be millions and tens of millions, you don't drive the cost down enough. You don't get the enough entrance into the market and that competitive aspect going. We are the ultimate general purpose machine, so let's
Yeah,
make humanoid
exactly.
robots.
And this is exactly what Elon has always been talking about, and we did touch on it before as well, to say just the design of your hand, the tendons and the way the tendons behave when you grab onto something, and the way they apply the pressure, is a result of millions and millions of years of evolution, and which means that the human hand is the ultimate robotic machine designed by the natural neural network. So it's quite natural to gravitate towards that, not just for anthropomorphic reasons, but also because it is efficient. It is able to manipulate objects more finely than any other robot, and its general purpose. So I completely agree with both Elon and Huang's perspective, which is definitely a big watch out for this
Yeah,
industry.
yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the predictions for the volumes and the total addressable market for humanoid robots is just bonkers, utterly bonkers. But anyway, let's wrap up with ethics, and this maybe sort of ties in a little bit, and it's a bit of a fun one, which is that AI was part of the reason for the name of the new pope. Now,
Wow.
when I came
Okay.
across this news story, I was like, "How's that work?" But apparently, 69-year-old American Robert Francis Prevost chose to take the name Pope Leo XIV because the name echoes Leo XIII at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And what he
Wow.
said was that the church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. So, humanoid robots are going to displace an awful lot of people. I mean, ultimately, they'll fill the gaps that we don't have enough people for, or people don't want to do those jobs. But it is going to get to the point where it is disrupting that. So in the same way that the original automation and the spinning machines and the weaving machines and things displaced the artisan labor. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting echo for why I chose that.
And also, it's interesting, right, that he did talk about human dignity, justice, and labor. And I
Yeah.
think that it's just kind of he's just sewing together so many things to say dignity is not just about financial wealth. It's
Mm.
about feeling worthy as an individual, adding value to society, and adding value to the community around you, and making something of your life's journey. I think that's why I really like that. This is the thing, right? So like no matter what opinions people have about people like Donald Trump, they go through a rigorous process of life and doing things in life in a certain way. And the Pope is that it takes them through a journey where they see things, and that gives them the authority of being able to be very prosaic, like what he said. The choice of three words, it's so beautiful: dignity, justice, and labor, which is encapsulate everything in a very simple sentence.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll drop the link to some more details on the speech on there. But the other quite interesting thing is that he is a bit of a nerd. Because he's actually got a mathematics degree from Villanova and publications in statistics. So yeah,
There you
he
go. Interesting.
definitely loves his maths. And just final one to end up on, because we've been doing a few quotes through this, is one from Ilya Sutskever, and this is perhaps a slightly chilling one to finish on. He said, "We'll definitely build a bunker before releasing AGI." So it comes from a quote and a backstory from Karen Howe's Empire of AI, and there's an excerpt that you can find in The Atlantic. So we'll drop the link into that one. But yes, I think when we're looking at all of the videos not being able to be distinguishable from reality, and humanoid robots being able to do anything that we can do, yes, you combine AGI and ultimately, artificial superintelligence beyond that, the world is going to change dramatically in the coming years.
Quite a lot. And we'll be here to take you there. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably a good place for us to wrap up with for this time. So as always, don't forget, please do visit engx.space, sign up for the updates. Please do like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to make sure that you don't miss the next episode when that comes out, which will be episode number 5 for the next couple of weeks' time. Do leave us some comments if you've got any feedback on this, if you've got any interesting things that you think we should be covering in future episodes. We would love to hear from you. But for the meantime, for myself and Govind, thank you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.